This is Marquivus Furyus Nias, and you're listening to Deeper Than Music Radio.
Deeper than music. The core of you, the fans, the truth is deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the newest, deeper than music, deeper than music. The core of you, the fans, the truth is deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the newest, deeper than music, deeper than music.
What up, what up, what up? This is your man Furyus, Deeper Than Music Radio. Behind every great song, there's an even greater story. I like to say what's up to Internet Land, Podcast Land on this wet Friday evening here in the DFW area. Fall is definitely here. Today we have a very special treat all the way from Berkeley, California. A man that wears many different hats. He's a music instructor, tour guide, a dueling piano player, and also part of a group called Drunken Logic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Jake Cassman here on Deeper Than Music Radio. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Thank you for being on the show, representing the left coast. So I imagine it's nice and dry and pretty decent out there.
70 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. It's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Today it was hot and humid, and hopefully we'll be in the 70s. But we're getting a little bit of that Noah's Ark weather. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, it's funny that when you grow up here, you don't really know how thunderstorms work, because you barely ever have rain, but when you do, there's no thunder or lightning. And then I moved back to the East Coast for school and got under my first thunder cell, and it scared the crap out of me. So I kind of miss that, though. I do kind of miss that.
It's funny you mention that, because I used to, as a kid, I grew up a military brat, and I'm also a Navy vet. So I lived in San Diego for a little while, and then my Navy career I did in Central California in the Green Acres, I like to call the San Joaquin Valley, and NAS Lemoore, and then San Diego, and my taste, the same thing. My taste of thunderstorms, like I remember in San Diego we had a thunderstorm and it had like a lightning. It hit like a transformer. And I tell people in California the weathermen have an easy job, and people complain if it's overcast.
Yes, they do.
Unfortunately here. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Well,
I've only been in LA for about 6 months, and the scariest time, I mean, driving in LA is a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
But it's beyond a nightmare if there's even the slightest rain, because nobody knows how to handle that at all. They're not used to it. They don't know how it works. They don't know to slow down and be more careful.
Nah.
It would be hilarious if you weren't worried for your life.
Oh, yeah. And then here, we're at the tail end of Tornado Alley, and I think two springs ago we had a tornado, F0 tornado touchdown in my neighborhood. So it's definitely a different location. But
yes.
My first question is, can you describe to us your sound and the story, and also with the band Drunken Logic? Like, what is describe the sound and then the name behind Drunken Logic, the group?
Sure. Yeah. I like to call our sound power folk as opposed to power pop. In that the bare bones of our songs tend to be your kind of a lot of traditional folk style writings. Like I could definitely hear Bob Dylan or Paul Simon or the band or any of those kind of old school 60s, 50s folk artists in a lot of the songwriting, but the production tends to be done up like 90s alternative or current indie rock stuff.
Okay.
And then we try and mix genres quite a bit too. So we've got some pedal steel and a horn section on this new album that's coming out in a couple of weeks. We play around with some reggae and some country from song to song, and try and change vibes quite a bit. So I think we're folk and rock primarily, maybe a little bit more. It goes back and forth between rock and folk, but there's a lot of other dashes of stuff in there too.
Okay, it's funny you mentioned 90s rock. I know now, being older now, Nirvana is considered adult rock or older genre. And I actually remember when they came on the scene back in the early 90s. So what made you want to become a musician? Because I also know, reading your bio and doing research, that a lot of stuff that you do revolves around music. You definitely have a passion for it. At what age did you know, like, this is what I want to pursue? This is what I love.
You know, it was always going to be there. My parents tell stories about me before I could walk, like crawling over to their stereo speakers on the floor and pulling myself up to listen to stuff when I was still a toddler.
Yeah.
So they knew it was there. They started me on piano when I was 5. But I come from a family of attorneys and not really people who've pursued the arts full time.
So more of a right side of the brain is the left side creative, and the right side is kind of.
Well, I think there's actually a lot of creative writing involved in law, to be frank. There's a lot of creative interpretation. So, I mean, yes, I think it's a very kind of white-collar environment, but at the same time, like, it's a lot of very focused essay writing, essentially. So it's a lot of interpretation and creative thought that goes into it, and I'm kind of glad that I got the best of both to a certain extent. But, yeah, I went to, college like everybody else, trying to be a part of music, but thinking that I didn't need music to be the sole focus of what I went to school for a long time. So I doubled in political science and music at my first school. And over time, I really loved it there, but I realized that I was unfulfilled, is the way I put it. I was happy, but I was unfulfilled. And so I took a shot at transferring to music school. They accepted me, and there's been no looking back since then. That was when I was 20 years old, so it was 8 years ago.
Oh, okay. So prior to that, were you in any bands or songwriting or in music as in depth as you are now?
Nowhere near as in depth as I am now. I've been writing stuff pretty consistently since middle school. Most of it wasn't any good. And I'd been in a band or 3 in high school and in college, but most of those guys just wanted to play covers, didn't want to take it quite as seriously as I did. And I kind of knew that was after a little while, I started to realize that kind of separated me from the people I was around, and that the only way to really feel like I was giving that my best shot was to go to school for it and think about it and live and breathe it as much as I could.
Okay. So immerse yourself in music. Oh, that's cool. And
exactly.
And also, I noticed that, like I said before, you wear many hats. Can you tell us the many hats that you wear? I mean, this is pretty impressive. Like, when I read your bio, I was like, man, this guy does everything under the sun.
I do a little bit of everything, yeah. So I just moved to LA 6 months ago, and the first job I got here was as a walking tour guide for tourists around different parts of LA. I actually just quit that job, but that means that I'm doing music full time out here, which is a blast. I play with a wedding band. I do dueling piano shows. I just started playing shows with a country artist. I pick up odd gigs here and there. I'm a music director and piano player and teacher at the Second City Comedy Theater here in Los Angeles. So I play a lot and teach a lot of improv comedy. And I play with some other groups as well. I've been in a musical since I've been here. I've booked concert shows. I've done radio. I've been through the ringer in a lot of different ways. So then on top of that, there's Drunken Logic.
So I mean, the way to do it, like, I feel like you're an all or nothing type of person, but so you definitely immersed yourself in music. So I have one of your songs queued up here. What a Beautiful Morning. Can you give us the story behind the song?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned that I studied political science for a while, and that politics and activism are a very important thing to me and my entire family. Mm-hmm. And this song, the idea for it started back as far as 2012, but there's this very, I think, dangerous sense of nostalgia for a bygone era of America in a lot of American politics. It kind of crystallized itself with the Make America Great Again movement. And I wanted to write a song that had somebody who, from the point of view of somebody who thought that, but where the music kind of exposed him as an unreliable narrator, as somebody who wasn't telling the whole truth or somebody who wasn't looking at the whole truth. And that is what both this song and the music video we put out, which won a couple of different awards at film festivals and stuff. That's the concept behind it.
Okay, cool. So here we go on Deeper Than Music Radio, Drunken Logic. What a beautiful morning.
Hey, this is Jake Cassman of Drunken Logic. You're listening to Deeper Than Music Radio.
There is a place I used to know, a cul-de-sac the middle class could once call home. White picket fence, a clean-cut lawn, the neighbors smiled and always left their curtains drawn. What a beautiful morning here in the USA. Every day, everything, everyone in their right estate. What a beautiful morning here in the USA. It seems like a dream, but to me it was yesterday. When men were men and women wives, it wasn't much, but it felt so safe in black and white. That was the place I used to know. Before we had all of that trouble years ago. What a beautiful morning here in the USA. Every day, everything, everyone in their right estate. What a beautiful morning here in the USA. It seems like a dream, but to me it was yesterday. What a beautiful morning here in the USA. Every day, everything, everyone in their right estate. What a beautiful morning here in the USA. It seems like a dream, but to me it was yesterday.
What up? This is Matt James, all the way from Canada. How's she going, eh? And you're listening to Furyus on Deeper Than Music.
Yes, that was What a Beautiful Morning here on Deeper Than Music Radio. You can definitely hear the musicality and the blends of different genres of music. I like how the irony of it, the melody and everything is happy-go-lucky, but like you said, you're talking about the facade of making America great.
Yeah. Well, I tend to be a very overly wordy songwriter, I think, especially before this most recent record. And this was kind of the first song I've probably ever written where I think the music tells a little bit more about what's actually happening here than the words do. And that's one of the reasons why I love that song so much. It's like just a very cool experiment. Yeah.
Kind of like everybody's hunky-dory, but it's not really what it seems, right? It's just a facade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's got that kind of bouncy, poppy 60s feel of like a song that the Monkees would do back then or something. Yeah. And then it falls apart and it just starts raging, and I love that aspect.
Yeah, it kind of it reminds me of the Monkees and a little bit of Weezer as well. I kind of got like a Weezer vibe to it. It's a good song. I like it. So you also said you're gonna be cast in a musical as well.
Well, so that was actually over the summer. I was in an original musical called Public Comment that was at the Hollywood Fringe Festival back in June and July.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and how was that experience?
That was amazing. To fall into, because I haven't acted in anything like that since high school. I've been around improv comedy for the last 2.5 years or so. But that's mostly as the piano player. If you watched Whose Line Is It Anyway, I basically am Laura Hall. I'm the one helping them come up with songs with the instruments on the side, but I'm not the guy out there on stage doing the acting.
Okay.
So this just kind of fell into my lap, and I thought I was just going to be one minor character in the whole thing. But I ended up playing 3 different roles over the course of a 60-minute show. And, being on the cast with guys who were getting roles in Westworld and stuff all at the same time. So it was a really cool.
So like, yeah, that's right. Because you are in that area. So that's
exactly.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was a blast doing it. It was a little nerve wracking at first just because acting is not what I do. So at least not primarily what I do. So, there's just this fear of, at first, am I pulling my weight? Am I doing what everybody else thinks I should be doing? Am I being a good teammate was kind of my first worry. But after the director said more or less that I was, I just had a blast with it. It was a lot of fun. It was a good show.
Because it seems like also with your dueling piano job, you kind of have to do things on the fly or play on the fly. So you already get a back seat to that. So you're already getting that experience. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and one of the dueling piano bars I worked for, they make you play bass and drums too, which are not my instruments. I can dabble in them a little bit, but I'm primarily a vocalist and a keyboard player. And their version of teaching you bass is, okay, you know how a fretboard works, right? Cool. Follow the piano player's left hand. Now you can play bass in front of 300 people a night, and they just throw you up there.
Trial by fire, huh?
Pretty much, man. And if you do that for a while, you kind of lose any semblance of stage fright that you might have, and it just becomes much more about, are you meeting your own expectations, and are you meeting the expectations of the people you're collaborating with? And that's what I love about that.
So can you give us a backstory on Drunken Logic?
Yeah. So like I said, I'd been writing music for a long time before I even got to music school. And while I was at school for music in Boston, at one point I was struggling with, because the minute you get to, I went to Berklee College of Music, and the minute you get there is the last day you're the most talented person at everything.
Because everybody there,
it's just so good, right? And it's very intimidating at first. At least it was for me. And so I kind of just sat back and wrote and watched everybody else perform for about 2 years. And then after about 2 years of working behind the scenes on stuff and like working at a concert venue on campus and that sort of thing, I decided I really want to give my own stuff a shot. And I went through this phase where I kept coming up with great band names to play under, and I'd Google them and they were all taken just every single time. Yeah. And then at one point I was in a pub somewhere and somebody said the phrase Drunken Logic, a friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to write that one down. Went home, Googled it, and it wasn't taken somehow. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick with it, and I'm gonna run with it. And it didn't mean that much to me then, but I think there is a kind of cooler, deeper meaning to it now, with some hindsight. So yeah.
And you pretty much do all the instrumentation, singing, and
yeah. Well, so I've been fortunate enough to have a rotating cast of characters on all 3 albums who have really helped fill out the parts. But yes, I typically write a song, make a demo of it, and then hand that demo over to people who are much more talented than I am at their respective instruments and say, make this your own.
Okay.
Make this cooler than I can make it on a MIDI keyboard. And I'm fortunate enough to have people who are really, really good at that.
Cool. So we have another one of your songs here, "Alone in America." Can you give us the story behind this song?
Sure. This is the most recent single off of the upcoming album, The Loudness Wars by Drunken Logic, which comes out on October 5th. It's one of my favorite songs on the record. It's about activism. It's about trying to take charge of your life in circumstances that are difficult. And the idea for it came when I was on tour with Drunken Logic. We were driving back from Iowa City to Chicago, and it's just nothing.
Cornfields.
The cornfields and flatness, right? Yeah. Absolutely nothing. And we're driving past the town, and I forget the name of the town, and I wish I knew. But they had, one of those points of interest signs on the freeway, on the highway. Yeah. But except this particular points of interest sign had nothing on it, which I just thought was the most hilarious thing in the world, that they put up the sign saying, here are the things that are interesting in this town. Oh, wait, we can't think of any.
There's nothing interesting.
Did they have a point of interest at some point and then decide it's not actually a point of interest? Or did they put it up optimistically, hoping that some point somebody will think there will be something interesting that's happening in this town? I just always wanted an answer, and I knew the minute I saw that I wanted to write a song about that town, and that's what Alone in America is.
Wow. So here you go. You got the story behind the music here. Drunken Logic, Alone in America, here on Deeper Than Music Radio.
What up, what up? This is Matt James, all the way from Canada. How's she going, eh? And you're listening to Furyus on Deeper Than Music.
Alone in America, forever surrounded by herself. It's painfully clear that this is just who she has always been. A living document, the meaning endlessly revised. She's not too big to fail. In these trying times, you have to try. Singing, never surrounded by herself. It's painfully clear that this is just who she will always be.
And there we go, Alone in America, Drunken Logic. I like the horns. It had like a little reggae feel to it. Really, really nice song.
Yeah, thank you.
I see, man, you say a lot of stuff and a lot of activism. Can you give us a rundown? So you mentioned, so this is on the album that's going to be released on October 5th. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us a rundown of your body of work?
Sure. So our first album was called Something New to Burn, and it came out in 2013. When I was still in school. God, that was forever ago. We put a second album out called Long Day's Journey to the Middle in 2015. And both of those albums were recorded with basically the same 5 people on all of the tracks all the way through, which is a really cool way to do it. But it was also a very rushed process. We had to track basically everything in the span of 4 or 5 days. And really kind of push to get this done. And then in 2016, we put out What a Beautiful Morning as a single ahead of the election, and it ended up getting picked up by this website called 30 Days, 30 Songs Against Trump before the election that featured songs by Death Cab for Cutie and Jimmy Eat World and all these really cool bands. And I was just moved by that, and in the process of that very turbulent 2016, I kind of ended up writing these other 11, 12 songs that ended up becoming the record, The Loudness Wars, which we recorded in a much more relaxed way over the span of about 9 months last year. But we also had about 20 different people play or produce on the record at different points. So it was a much bigger team, a much larger collaboration, and I think you can really hear that in the sound of this new record.
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah, that sounds real big. You mentioned the third album is going to be a concept album. Can you give us a rundown on what the concept of the album is and the story?
Yeah. So like I said, What a Beautiful Morning was a song written from the point of view of somebody who thinks that Trump is making America great again, and that this specific era of time from the 1950s and the early 60s, pre-civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Is when America was at its best. And I was so flabbergasted by that idea that, without going into too much detail as to why or anything like that, but I decided, yes, we can debate that all day long, but I mean, not debate it. I disagree with it, but I did want to try and write more songs from the point of view of this character and see if I could find empathy for him. Because at the end of the day, this is not a point of view I agree with. I think it's poisonous and toxic and terrible, and I think you can see the damage it's doing to this country on a daily basis.
Oh yeah.
But at the end of the day, I do think we make caricatures of the people we disagree with, and I wanted to go out of my way to not do that. I wanted to go out of my way to create a character who believed in that stuff, but was at the same time a sympathetic one, somebody whose story and feelings you could understand, even if you didn't necessarily agree with them. So the concept of the album is basically that there's 2 characters, one who's more our generation, and then one maybe more of our parents or grandparents' generation.
So like a baby boomer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they trade off singing songs over the course of the record. And so there's a lot of contradiction and exposure of hypocrisy and of cognitive dissonance in the way they think about the world and about their own lives. And I wanted to explore that on both sides. Not that there's just 2 sides, but I think our national conversation can often be reduced to just 2 sides. So I wanted to make fun of that idea.
Yeah, and I mean, I applaud you for speaking about that, because right now, I mean, I won't go too far in detail, but I feel like since the whole Make America Great Again, every day I'm like, wow, things can't get any worse. and I'm proven wrong.
And then you wake up the next day and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Consistently, like, and it's just like, I guess, and to me, because I travel too, and a lot of people from foreign countries are like, how did you guys let this happen? And it's just, to me, the disconnect and the total disregard to everyone that's not a part of the majority. Like right now we have this whole thing with Kavanaugh, and I mean, but I applaud you. Like I said, I applaud you because I appreciate the irony, because it's like, are people like the first song, are they just listening there and la 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 and things are all great? It's
Right.
It's the best. But I actually have another song of yours queued up that we could tell us the story about. It's called "What If I Don't Want to Grow Up."
Yeah, so this is the first single off of the Loudness Wars, and this track isn't quite so overtly political. I think it's more kind of a social commentary. Mm-hmm. But I don't know about you, but I feel constantly under pressure. I feel like I should know how to be an adult by now. Is kind of how I often feel like I feel like, wow, man, I should really have a better handle on my life, my schedule, my relationships with people, and I always am finding ways in which I'm being I didn't pay attention to something, and then I feel like crap and beat myself up for not being mature enough, even though that's not necessarily the whole story. It's just the mode that I go to, and so this song is what if I don't grow up is about just that shocking realization of, so maybe being an adult is just convincing other people you actually are an adult, even if you don't feel like one. Yeah. Even if you don't feel like you're in control as much as everybody, as it seemed like your parents were when you were growing up. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's about that feeling. Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. Deeper Than Music Radio with Drunken Logic. I Don't Want to Grow Up.
This is Gary Devon Dotson, and you're listening to Deeper Than Music Radio.
What happens when the four of us are in the same room and we haven't seen each other since leaving the womb? But the hiss of the static means no one has a damn thing to say. We just stare at our phones, they're glued to our hands. We're searching for friends, making overdue plans. Cause wherever we are at, the greener grass is fading to gray. There must have been a point where we could have said no. We'd never be these people, we swore it not long ago. What if I don't grow up, I just grow old, a product of the clock. They just add 15% more and change the box. What if I don't grow up, I just grow colder, orbiting away. And the sun keeps shrinking with every passing day. So nobody's happy, the photos are shocked, and everybody's bumping and waiting
Ladies and gentlemen, Drunken Logic, What If I Don't Grow Up? That song right there has a Green Day feel to it. That reminds me of American Idiot all the way.
Well, you were asking me where my journey in music began, and the other point you can really go back to. I grew up in Berkeley, California, which is where Green Day are from, and my first ever show was them outdoors at AT&T Park, which is where the Giants play baseball, and it was 47,000 people. They were on that tour, and they are such just amazing performers. Billy Joe was one of the best frontmen out there, and I just watched what he was doing and was like, what could possibly be better than what he's feeling right now? And that's kind of what hooked me.
Wow, that definitely, you can definitely tell that has a Green Day influence. I didn't ask you that. Who are your influences? Out of curiosity.
It ranges, and I'm Green Day definitely taught me how to write a pop song back in the day, for sure. But my parents started me on The Who and the Beatles from a very young age. A lot of contemporary artists like Dawes and Frank Turner and Josh Ritter, and I spent the summer going back through all of the Genesis / Peter Gabriel / Phil Collins discography.
Yeah.
So I'm still going through that because all of those guys are very prolific.
Wow,
But I can draw from just about anything. I went through a Curtis Mayfield phase last month. So it can be a little bit of anything.
Wow.
And yes, and I firmly believe that there's no form of music out there that's totally inaccessible and not applicable to whatever it is you're trying to do either now or in the future. So I just try and learn.
So what have so we're talking about politics, we're talking about now, and we got 5 minutes. Like always, the great interviews go by so fast. How do you feel about the current state of music right now?
I think like everything else, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. And maybe there's some hope. I know the Senate just passed a major music bill that might actually let artists get paid royalties a little bit more fairly on streaming services. Yeah, the
streaming services are horrible.
Right. Well, and we're at a point now where it's easier to make music and to show that music to people than there's ever been. And
that's true.
So and that's wonderful. And I wouldn't be talking to you if you couldn't just look up my music on Spotify and make sure I don't suck beforehand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's how you meet people now, and that's great. I do think it's a shame that artists can't make the kind of money. I mean, nobody's ever going to make Michael Jackson Thriller sales again.
Oh yeah, that was an era in time that.
Yeah,
he capitalized exactly. Yeah, in the technology.
Boy, did he! Yes, he was the right man at the right time. But I do think there is a way to ensure that artists aren't just getting paid fractions of cents when somebody streams their music. I think there's a better way to do that.
0.003.
Yeah, exactly. I've gotten that check from Spotify for 1 cent or whatever for sure.
So now we're down to like 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Where can people hear you, see you? This is a time for shameless promotion.
Got it. DrunkenLogicMusic.com is the website. We're on Facebook /Drunken Logic, on Twitter and Instagram @DrunkenLogics with an S at the end. We are, like I said, dropping the new album, The Loudness Wars, on October 5th. We're doing album release shows on September 29th in San Francisco and on October 5th in Los Angeles. All of that is on our website and social media as well. And there will be a music video for Alone in America coming out sometime in October as well. We're still working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll close out the song, this segment with your last song. And also I'm adding your songs to every Monday we play Music Mondays. So your music will be added to the rotation.
Awesome.
So last song to close out, and the story behind the song is This Side or the Other. What's the story behind this song?
This is a very personal one. And it's very much, we were talking about just how art is supposed to be an act of empathy, that you're trying to either pass on something you've learned to other people, or you're trying to learn from other people in terms of creating it. And this is very much a song about I learned what Berklee College of Music is one of the most diverse schools in the country, and I learned on the diversity retreat about the experiences of people who are not straight white males who grew up in a certain amount of financial privilege like myself. And I wrote this song as a response to that, because I wanted, at the same time, while I realized that my experience was different, I did realize at the same time that we've all felt that same shame or anger at different points for different reasons, but we've all been there. And I wanted to write a message to people to hang in there no matter what you're trying to do or where you're from, and to learn from each other and be there for each other. And that's ultimately what this song is about.
And I think all Americans should go on. Was that a diversity retreat? They all of you
Hell
need
yes.
to go on a diversity retreat. Texas,
sure.
diversity
For sure.
retreat. All right, here we go. Closing out the show, and again, thank you for your time. Thank you for the allowing us to hear your music and the story behind the music. We're gonna close out Deeper Than Music here with Drunken Logic, This Side of the Other. And remember, behind every great song, there's an even greater story. Mark and Drunken Logic signing off here on Deeper Than Music Radio.
Thank you, man.
Blossom and your arms may spread out wide. They may cross your chest, protecting what's inside. And you can always cross your fingers, but don't ever tell yourself your hands are tied. Your hands aren't tied. For any glimmer in your eye may fade in time. That scar you wear may be a well-worn sign of wisdom, and the surest course may turn on a dime. Heads or tails, one side or the other.